You are now listening to Mark's Unexplained World by Mark the Medium from Hinckley Community Radio, a non-profit podcast radio station. Tonight's episode is about the Therac-25 incident. So it's over to you, Mark.
The Therac-25 is a computer-controlled radiation therapy machine produced by the Atomic Energy of Canada Limited, or the AECL, back in 1982. It was built after the earlier units, the Therac-6, which produced X-rays of up to 6 MeV, and the Therac-20, which could produce X-rays or electrons of up to 20 MeV. MeV meaning mega electron volts. Between the years of 1985 and 1987, the Therac-25 was involved in at least 6 accidents in which some patients were given huge overdoses of radiation. Due to concurrent programming errors, it sometimes gave its patients radiation doses that were hundreds of times greater than normal, resulting in serious injury and even in some cases death. These accidents have not only highlighted the dangers of software control of safety critical systems, but they have become a standard case study in health informatics, software engineering and computer ethics. Greetings, Unexplainers, and of course a huge thank you for tuning in again and listening to this episode of Mark's Unexplained World. My name is Mark Hughes. I'm a psychic medium, a ufologist and a true crime buff, with a little bit of darkness thrown in for good measure. In this episode, I'm going to tell you about the story surrounding the Therac-25 incident. And this week's necessary disclaimer. This story is a tale that sadly involves medical mistakes, radiation poisoning and death, so may prove upsetting to some. You listen at your own discretion and remember that all the opinions and comments are strictly my own. However, the facts do still remain. I also apologise if I pronounce anything incorrectly. My English itself is okay. It is my spelling that's the problem. So, let us get back to the story at hand. First, let us look at some of the history behind the Therac-25. Although I do warn you listeners, it does get a bit sciencey. So, here goes. In the early 1970s, the French company CGR and the Canadian public company Atomic Energy of Canada Limited, or otherwise known as AECL, collaborated on the construction of linear accelerators controlled by a mini-computer, otherwise known as the Therac-6 and the Therac-20. The Therac-6 produced X-rays of up to 6 mega electron volts, and the Therac-20, which could produce X-rays or electrons of up to, you guessed it, 20 mega electron volts. The company, or the French company CGR, who developed the software for the Therac-6, also reused some of the subroutines for the Therac-20. This computer also added some ease of use with the Therac-25 because the linear accelerators controlled by the mini-computer could also operate without it. In 1981, the two companies, CGR and the Canadian public company Atomic Energy of Canada Limited, ended their collaboration agreement. The latter, AECL, developed a new double-pass concept for electron acceleration in a more confined space, changing its energy source from klystron to magnetron. A klystron is a specialist linear beam vacuum tube which is used as an amplifier for high radio frequencies which vary from UHF up into the higher microwave range. And a magnetron is a high-power vacuum tube used in early radar systems and subsequently in microwave ovens, and also in linear particle accelerators. In certain techniques, the electrons produced are used directly, while in others they are made to collide against a tungsten anode or X-ray tube to produce X-ray beams. This dual accelerator concept was applied both to the Therac-20 and the Therac-25, with the Therac-25 being much more compact, versatile and much easier to use. It was also found to be more economical for a hospital to have a dual machine like the Therac-25, as it could apply treatments of both electrons and X-rays instead of having to use two different machines. So basically, the Therac-25 was designed as a machine that was controlled by a computer, with some of the previous safety mechanisms switched from hardware to software. There were a couple of extra things that AECL decided to do with the Therac-25, and that was 1, not to duplicate some of the safety mechanisms, and 2, to reuse modules and code routines from the Therac-20. The Therac-25 was in every respect an evolution of the Therac-6 software. So, in 1976, the first prototype of the Therac-25 was built, with the aim to begin marketing the machine by the end of 1982, just 6 years ahead. 5 of the Therac-25 machines were installed in the United States and 6 were installed in Canada. The software for the Therac-25 was developed by one person over several years, using the PDP-11 assembly language. A little techie stuff here about the PDP-11 assembly language. The macro 11 is in fact the assembly language with macro facilities designed for the PDP-11 mini computer family from the Digital Equipment Corporation, or DEC for short. Macro 11 was supported on all DEC PDP-11 operating systems. Are you keeping up? Good. In 1986, the program developer for the Therac-25 left AECL. So the next question is, how did it work? Well, the Therac-25 machine had 3 modes of operation, with the turntable moving the apparatus into position for each of these modes. Now, are you sitting comfortably? Good, because I may need you to picture this in your mind. Well, you don't need to, but it might help. The patient is then placed on a fixed stretcher, and above the patient is a turntable to which the components that modify the electron beam is fixed. The turntable has one position for the X-ray mode, a second position for the electron mode, and a third position for making adjustments while using visible light. The turntable itself has some micro switches that indicate its position to the computer. When the turntable is in one of the 3 allowed fixed positions, a plunger then interlocks it. This was to ensure that the turntable was in the correct position before starting any treatment. Originally, this type of machine, electromechanical locks were traditionally used. However, in the Therac-25, these electromechanical locks were replaced by using software checks. There are 6 documented Therac-25 accidents that occurred when the high current electron beam generated in X-ray mode was delivered directly to the patients. This incident was blamed on 2 software faults. The first fault was the operator incorrectly selecting X-ray mode before quickly changing to electron mode, which allowed the electron beam to be set for X-ray mode without the X-ray target, i.e. the patient, being in the proper place. And the second fault allowed the electron beam to activate during the field light mode, during which no beam scanner or target was again in place. The previous Therac models 6 and 20 originally had hardware electromechanical locks to prevent this type of fault or error happening, but they had been removed from the Therac-25, instead depending on software checks for safety. After this first short break, in part 2, we will look at more details as to what actually happened to some of the victims of the Therac-25 incidents.
This show is brought to you courtesy of Neil Packer and the Haunted Antiques Paranormal Research Centre. Find them online at www.hauntedresearchcentre.com or at 9 to 11 Regent Street, Hinckley, LE10 1AW. Open on Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. for guided tours of the haunted rooms at just £3 per person. Booking is essential at all times, and over 16s only, please, unless accompanied by an adult. The haunted rooms are extremely haunted, and paranormal activity could and has taken place at any time. Some areas and particular objects or items can be quite scary and unnerving. Membership is available for £25 to qualify for selective offers. And why not download the app, available on both iOS and Android, for only $3.99, to keep up to date with what is coming up at the centre.
It has been reported that the Therac-25 high current electron beam had struck the patients with approximately 100 times higher than the intended dose of radiation. But not only that, the radiation had been given to the patients over a narrow area of the body, delivering them a potentially lethal dose of beta radiation. A very quick, interesting side note here: beta radiation is a form of ionizing radiation and is a lot more penetrating. One of the patients, a Mr. Ray Cox, described the feeling as, and I quote, "an intense electric shock," causing Ray Cox to scream and run out of the treatment room. A few days later, radiation burns appeared and Ray Cox exhibited the symptoms of radiation poisoning. So, let us take a look at the incidents regarding the other patients. A Therac-25 machine had been operating for about 6 months at the Keniston Regional Oncology Centre in Marietta, Georgia. On the 3rd of June 1985, a 61-year-old woman named Katie Yarborough went to the oncology centre to have radiation therapy treatment following a lumpectomy. Katie Yarborough was set to receive a 10 mega-electron volts or 10 MeV dose of electron therapy to her clavicle or collarbone. When the Therac-25 was all set up and the electron therapy began, Katie Yarborough stated she experienced a, and I quote,
"tremendous force of heat, this red-hot sensation."
And when the technician entered the room, Katie Yarborough then told him, and I quote,
"You burned me."
The technician assured Katie Yarborough that this was not possible. However, when she returned home in the following days, she experienced spasms and a reddening of the treatment area, which led to her shoulder becoming locked in place. And within 2 weeks, the reddening of the treatment area had spread from her chest to her back, indicating that the source of the burn had passed right through her body, which is exactly what happens with radiation burns. Also, due to the radiation overdose, her breast had to be surgically removed, an arm and shoulder were immobilised, and she was then always in constant pain. The staff at the Oncology Treatment Centre did not believe that this was possible for the Therac-25 to have caused such an injury, so she was treated as a symptom of cancer. Later, though, the hospital physicist calculated that the applied dose given to Katie Yarborough was between 15,000 and 20,000 rads, or radiation-absorbed doses, when she should have only been dosed with 200 rads. And to put that into some perspective, just a normal dose of 1,000 rads can be fatal. So, the hospital physicist decided to consult AECL about the incident. And on the October of 1985, Katie Yarborough sued the hospital and the manufacturer of the Therac-25 machine. And in the November of 1985, AECL was notified of the lawsuit. Unfortunately, due to the treatment printout function not being activated at the time of Katie Yarborough's treatment under the Therac-25, there was no record of the applied radiation area. So, an out-of-court settlement was reached to resolve the lawsuit. It was not until the March of 1986, after another incident involving the Therac-25, that the AECL informed the FDA that it had received a complaint from a patient. On an interesting side note, the FDA is the United States Food and Drug Administration and is a federal agency of the Department of Health and Human Services. This Food and Drug Administration is responsible for protecting and promoting public health through the control and supervision of food safety, tobacco products, prescriptions, including over-the-counter pharmaceutical drugs, vaccines, blood transfusions, medical devices, veterinary products, and a variety of other health and human services. The FDA's primary focus is enforcement of the Federal Food, Drug and Cosmetic Act. However, the agency also enforces other laws of the Public Health Service Act, as well as associated regulations. Much of this regulatory enforcement work is not directly related to food or drugs, but involves other factors such as regulating lasers, cellular phones, and condoms. In addition, the FDA takes control of diseases in the context, varying from household pets to human sperm donated for use in assisted reproduction. The FDA's headquarters is located in unincorporated White Oak, Maryland. The agency has 223 field offices and 13 laboratories, located across the 50 states, United States Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. At the Ontario Cancer Foundation, in 1985, the Therac-25 had been in operation for about 6 months. And on the 26th of July in that same year, a 40-year-old patient was receiving her 24th treatment for cervical cancer. The operator of the Therac-25 activated the treatment, but after just 5 seconds, the machine stopped with the following error message.
H-tilt, T-I-L-T.
This message, according to the Therac-25, was a treatment pause indication and indicated to the operator that no radiation had been applied to the patient. So the operator pressed the proceed key, which told the Therac-25 to continue. The Therac-25 machine then stopped again. The operator repeated the same process of pressing the proceed key 5 times until the Therac-25 eventually stopped the treatment. After the treatment was complete, the operator called for a technician who found no problems with their Therac-25 machine. But not only that, the machine had also already treated 6 other patients that day without any technical issues. Soon after her treatment, the 40-year-old patient started to complain of a burning and swelling in the area that the Therac-25 machine had treated her. It was then, on the 30th of July in 1985, when she was hospitalised. It was suspected by the Ontario Cancer Foundation staff that she was suffering from a radiation overdose that had been given to her by the Therac-25, so the machine was immediately taken out of service. Sadly, just 3 months later, on the 3rd of November 1985, the patient died of cancer. After her autopsy, The coroner mentioned that if she had not died then, she would have most certainly had to have undergone a hip replacement surgery due to the damage from the radiation overdose, with a technician estimating that the patient received between 13,000 and 17,000 rads, or radiation-absorbed doses. The incident was then reported to the United States Food and Drug Administration, otherwise known as the aforementioned FDA, and the Canadian Radiation Protection Bureau. On a short note here, the Radiation Protection Bureau is responsible for delivering Health Canada's Environmental and Occupational Radiation Protection Programme. When the Therac-25 incident was reported to the AECL, they suspected that there might be an error with the 3 micro switches that report the position of the turntable to the computer. However, when the engineer from AECL was unable to replicate the failure of the micro switches, he deemed the test as inconclusive. They then changed the method to be tolerant of one failure and modified the software to check if the turntable was moving or in the treatment position. Afterward, the AECL claimed that by doing these modifications, they represented a 5 order of magnitude increase in safety. Another quick side note here, orders of magnitude are used in industry to make approximate comparisons. Now, I'm not going to lie to you here, people. I did check out the website for information regarding orders of magnitude, and they are very complex to work out, especially for a small-time podcaster like myself. But suffice to say, by AECL using this order of magnitude method, they did conclude that the Therac-25 was safe to use. At Yakima Valley Memorial Hospital in the December of 1985, a woman developed a erythema, otherwise known as a redness of the skin or mucous membranes, with a parallel band pattern after receiving treatment from a Therac-25 unit. So on the 31st of January 1986, the Yakima Valley Memorial Hospital staff sent a letter to the AECL about the incident. The AECL then responded with a 2-page letter detailing the reasons why a radiation overdose was impossible on the Therac-25, stressing that both machine failure and operator error were impossible. 6 months later, the very same patient developed chronic ulcers under the skin due to tissue necrosis, and had to have both surgery and skin grafts. As far as I can see, the patient continues to live, but continues to live with minor sequelae. Is that right, sequelae?
I think so.
On an interesting side note, a sequelae is a pathological condition resulting from a disease, injury, therapy, or other trauma, and is used in the medical field to mean a complication or condition following a prior illness or disease. The word sequela is actually derived from the Latin word meaning sequel. After this second short break, in part 3, we will look at the other innocent victims of the Therac-25 and some of the possible root causes.
Fright Nights was established in 1999 as the first company in the world to offer overnight ghost hunt experiences to the general public, pioneering paranormal events since the last century. Fright Nights operate at hundreds of the UK's most haunted and exclusive venues. All events have their own team of experienced paranormal investigators, mediums and psychics. They have a VIP members club for regular returning guests, offering loyalty discounts and exclusive invitation-only events. They can also host private events for your family and friends. You can contact them on 07 852 998 628 or email them at office@frightnights.co.uk, or take a look at their website at www.frightnights.co.uk, where you can see the many locations they investigate and learn about them and the opportunities they have available. Hundreds of ghost hunters join Fright Nights every month for the most thrilling ghost hunting experiences they'll never forget. If you haven't been on a ghost hunt before, then why not join them to see what it's all about? Why not visit their social media sites for up-to-date information on all the places they visit and to see what's coming up in the future? They look forward to seeing you all soon. Fright Nights Ghost Hunting Events. Remember, only the original will do.
Over a period of 2 years, the East Texas Cancer Center in Tyler had treated more than 500 patients using the Therac-20 with no incidents. This all changed, however, when on the 21st of March 1986, a patient who had a tumour on his back was scheduled for his 9th treatment session. It all started when the experienced operator entered the session data onto the computer and then realised that she had written an X instead of an E as the type of treatment that was needed for this particular patient. So, with the cursor, the experienced operator went up and changed the X to an E, and since the rest of the parameters on the computer screen were correct, she then pressed Enter until she got down to the command box. All the parameters were marked
Verified.
and the computer message said,
Raise ready.
The experienced operator then hit the B key and the
Beam on.
message was displayed. The machine then suddenly stopped and displayed the message,
Malfunction 54. Error 54.
It also showed the message,
Treatment pause.
and according to the Therac-20 manual, it said that the malfunction 54 message was a
Dose input to error.
An AECL technician did at a later date testify that the dose input to message meant that the radiation delivered to the patient was either too high or too low. The experienced operator noticed that the radiation monitor or dosimeter showed that only 6 units had been supplied to the patient when it had demanded 202 units. So the operator then pressed the proceed or continue key again. The machine again stopped with the following message,
Malfunction 54. Error 54.
with the dosimeter indicating again that it had delivered fewer units than the patient required. Unfortunately, the surveillance cameras in the radiation room were offline, and to add to the misfortune of the patient, the intercom system on that day had also been broken. When the Therac-25 gave its first dose of units to the patient, the one with the tumour on his back, he first felt an electric shock and then heard a crackling noise coming from the machine. Since the patient had already had 8 sessions with the Therac-25, he very quickly realised that this was not normal for the way the machine worked. So, the patient started to get up from the table to ask for help, but it was at that moment that the experienced operator pressed the proceed or continue key again to continue the treatment. The patient then felt a shock of electricity shoot right through his arm, feeling as if his hand was being torn off. He slowly managed to reach the door in the room and then started banging on it repeatedly with the experienced operator until the experienced operator, heard the noise and opened it. A physician was immediately called to the scene, where they observed intense erythema in the area of the patient's body where the units were given, although at the time the staff suspected that it had just been a simple electric shock. Erythema, which, if you remember, is known as a redness of the skin. After his ordeal, the patient was then sent home. The hospital physicist then checked the Therac-25 machine, and because it was calibrated to the correct specification, it then continued to treat patients throughout the rest of the day. The hospital technicians at the East Texas Cancer Center in Tyler were totally unaware that the patient with the tumour on his back had received a massive dose of radiation. To give you an idea of what the patient was meant to receive, the treatment was set up for 22 MeV, meaning mega electron volts, of electrons with a dose of 180 rad in an area of 10 by 17 centimetres with an accumulated radiation in 6 weeks of 6,000 rad. However, what the patient actually received on this one session alone was 16,500 to 25,000 rads in less than 1 second over an entire area of 1 cubic centimetre. Over the following weeks, the patient experienced a number of the following symptoms: paralysis of the left arm with nausea and vomiting, both of his legs, mid-diaphragm and vocal cords being paralysed, recurrent herpes simplex skin conditions, and ended up being hospitalised for radiation-induced myelitis of the spinal cord. The patient died 5 months later after the overdose. The next day after the accident, the AECL technicians checked the Therac-25 machine and were unable to replicate error 54. And on top of that, they checked the grounding of the machine to rule out any electric shock as the cause. The Therac-25 was fully back in operation on the 7th of April 1986. Four days later, at the same hospital, the East Texas Cancer Center in Tyler, on the 11th of April 1986, a patient was to receive electron treatment for skin cancer on the face. The prescription was for 10 MeV, meaning mega electron volts, for an area of 7 by 10 centimetres. The procedure was being carried out by the same operator as the patient with the tumour on his back from March that same year, just 3 weeks earlier. After filling in all the treatment data, the same operator realised that they had to change the mode from X to E. They did this and then pressed enter to go down to the command box. As
beam ready
was displayed, he then pressed the proceed or continue key. The Therac-25 machine then produced a loud noise which could be heard throughout the intercom, which was obviously working that day. And then the computer displayed
error 54
on its screen. The operator then entered the machine room itself, with the patient describing a burning sensation on his face. Sadly, the patient died on the 1st of May 1986, less than a month following the treatment. The autopsy showed that there was severe radiation damage to the right temporal lobe and the brainstem. The hospital physicist immediately stopped all the Therac-25 machine treatments and notified the AECL. After a lot of strenuous work and long hours, the physicist and operator were finally able to reproduce the error 54 message. They determined that it was the speed in editing the data entry that was a key factor in producing error 54. And after much practice, the physicist was able to reproduce the error 54 message at will. Meanwhile, back at the Yakima Valley Memorial Hospital, on the 17th of January 1987, a patient was to receive a treatment with 2 film verification exposures of 4 and 3 rads, plus a 79 rad photon treatment for a total exposure of 86 rads. Are you keeping up? Good. The film was then placed under the patient, and 4 rads from the Therac-25 machine were administered through the 22 by 18 centimetre opening on the patient. The Therac-25 machine was then stopped by the operator, and the aperture was then opened to 35 by 35 centimetres, and a dose of 3 rad was then administered. So far, so good. Then, the Therac-25 machine was stopped again by the operator, who then entered the room to remove the aforementioned film plates and adjust the patient's position. He then used the hand control that was already inside the room to adjust the Therac-25 turntable. The operator then left the room, forgetting the film plates. In the control room, after the operator saw the
beam ready
message, he then pressed the B key to fire the beams. After just 5 seconds, the Therac-25 machine stopped and then displayed a message that very quickly vanished off the screen. However, since the Therac-25 machine was paused anyway, the operator continued with the treatment and pressed the proceed or continue key. The machine then suddenly stopped, and on the computer screen showed the word
flatness.
The operator then heard the patient saying something on the intercom, but could not understand what they were saying, so the operator himself decided to enter the room. And although the computer screen showed that the patient had only been given 7 rads, he was feeling a severe burning sensation on his chest, and within a few hours the patient showed actual burns on the skin, on and around the chest area. Once the AECL was contacted, they began an immediate investigation. However, they were again unable to reproduce the event. The Yakima Valley Memorial Hospital in-house physicist conducted tests with film plates to see if he could recreate the incident. The film plates appeared to match the plates that were left by mistake by the operator under the patient during the accident. It was found that the patient was exposed to between 8,000 and 10,000 rads instead of the prescribed 86 rads. So unfortunately, the patient died in April 1987 from complications due to a radiation overdose. The relatives of the patient filed a lawsuit that again ended with an out-of-court settlement. A commission attributed the primary cause of the accidents concerning the Therac-25 to poorly designed software and development practices. In particular, the software for the Therac-25 was designed so that it was realistically impossible to test it in a rigorous and automated way. Researchers who investigated the accidents found several contributing causes. These included 1. The company, AECL, did not have the software code independently reviewed and did not consider the design of the software during its assessment. 2. AECL had never tested the Therac-25 with the combination of software and hardware until it was fully assembled at the hospital. 3. The idea of having just several error messages merely displaying the word
malfunction,
followed by a number from 1 to 64 when the user manual did not explain or even address these error codes, was a threat to patient safety. And 4. The machine operators who were reassured by AECL personnel themselves that the overdoses from the Therac-25 were impossible. As I mentioned earlier in this podcast, the software for the Therac-25 was developed by one person over several years, and that it was an evolution of the Therac-6 software. In 1986, this developer or programmer left AECL, and during the lawsuit, lawyers could not identify this programmer or even learn about his qualifications and experience. In 3 of these cases, the injured patients later died as a result of radiation overdoses from the Therac-25. After the accidents in 1988, AECL dissolved the AECL medical section, and the company, Theratronic International Limited, took over the maintenance of the installed Therac-25 machines. Nancy Levson, who is an American specialist in system and software safety, notes that a lesson is to be drawn from the Therac-25 incident, and that is to not assume that reused software is safe. She also says, and I quote,
"A naive assumption is often made that reusing software or using commercial off-the-shelf software will increase safety because the software will have been exercised extensively. Reusing software modules does not guarantee safety in the new system to which they are transferred."
In response to incidents like those associated with the Therac-25, the IEC 62304 standard was created, which introduces development life cycle standards for medical device software and specific guidance on using software of unknown pedigree.
Thank you all for taking the time out to listen to this episode of Mark's Unexplained World. In our next episode, show number 88, we are going to be looking at Alison Mack and NXIVM. NXIVM was a cult started and built by convicted racketeer and sex offender Keith Raniere. NXIVM is also the name of the defunct corporation that Keith Raniere founded, which provided seminars in the field of human potential development. But it also served as a front for the organisation of criminal activity. Alison Christine Mack was an American actress who was also a member of NXIVM. And in 2018, she was arrested by federal authorities on charges of sex trafficking and forced labour conspiracies related to her involvement with NXIVM and its subgroup DOS.
This show was written and researched by me, Mark Hughes, and proofread and edited by Linda Hughes. The pronunciation of all the names and places, though, as usual, was all mine. The actors in this episode were Mark Hughes, Linda Hughes and Denise Poolar, with special thanks to Neil Packer and the staff at the Haunted Antiques Paranormal Research Centre in Hinckley. And a big thank you to everyone for listening. Mark's Unexplained World, because there's more to the paranormal than meets the third eye. And remember, guys, keep it real, because being real is better than being perfect. This show and all its contents are covered by basic copyright of Mark the Medium.